Well, it was written in the stars, wasn't it? In my culture, we have a saying. They say, when something is written for you, the entire world can conspire against you. You can conspire against yourself. But what is written for you can't be taken away. And Cote d'Ivoire had this African Cup of Nations trophy written in their name. There's absolutely no doubt about it. They're the champions of the 34th edition of this African Cup of Nations. They're champions for the third time in their history. And who can say that they don't deserve it? Maybe a few of you will. But overall, I believe over the 7 matches that they put in, they are worthy winners of this African Cup of Nations. Welcome to the African Five-A-Side podcast. My name is Maher Mazahi. I'm your host. This podcast, as always, is brought to you by africasacountry.com. And we come to the end of an African Cup of Nations, match number 64 out of 64, as I like to say. And you can only really find storylines like this in football and in the African Cup of Nations. I just transport myself, and as I'm watching the celebrations behind me on the television, I'm thinking back to that match against Equatorial Guinea. I watched it in a fan zone in Abidjan with a bunch of Ivorians, and they were down 1-0, but I think they still felt very confident that they could. Maybe it was 0-0 at halftime, but they still felt very confident that they could win that match. And I left in thinking the 55th minute or in the 50th minute, and I went down to the stadium, Stade Félix Houphouët-Boigny, for a match. I believe, I forget which match it was. Maybe it was Egypt or something. And I remember just being in the taxi, and he has the radio playing, and hearing that Ivory Coast conceded a second, and then a third, and then by that time he dropped me off, and I was walking to the stadium, and the police officers who were checking, supporters going into the stadium, searching them, his hearing that they conceded a fourth, and just the absolute state of shock and disbelief on everybody's faces. There's no way, if you told me there and then that this team was going to end up being champions, that I would have believed you. But that's football. Um, that's football. And the storylines, not just of the team, even the players. Sebastien Haller in 2022, not even 2 years ago, diagnosed with testicular cancer. Now he scores the winning goal in the African Cup of Nations. What must be going on, in his head? It's incredible. I don't even know if it's worth talking about the game too much. I think it was fairly easy to analyze the game. In terms of team news, it was exactly how we expected both sides to line up. Cote d'Ivoire in their 4-3-3, Nigeria in that, again, what I call a 5-2-3. There were just two personnel decisions that I didn't think were going to be made. Odilon Kosunu comes back from suspension, and he's immediately slotted back into the starting lineup for Cote d'Ivoire. In the preview, I said maybe I prefer Willy Boli. I was wrong about that. Odilon Kosunu put in the match of his life. He was very, very good as a center half. Nigeria made a change in that they put in Samuel Chukwueze instead of Moses Simon. And this one, I didn't anticipate. I didn't understand. And I think many Nigerians didn't understand, and they realized it was a mistake. And as early as, I believe, the 55th minute, Chukwueze was hooked off after a very, very mediocre first half, and Moses Simon was brought on, and I thought he was immediately better than his teammate. But yeah, is there really much to talk about in this game? I mean, Cote d'Ivoire were better for almost the entirety of the match, for almost 90 minutes. Let's look at the statistics of the 90 minutes. 62% to 38 possession for Cote d'Ivoire. 18 total shots to 5 shots for Cote d'Ivoire. 1.6 xG for Cote d'Ivoire, 0.24 xG for Nigeria. 8 shots on target for Cote d'Ivoire, 1 single shot on target for Nigeria, which was obviously the goal. There's no statistical category that Nigeria has the advantage over against Cote d'Ivoire. No positive statistical categories. So I don't really know what there is to talk about. The entire first half, the entire match, Simon Adingra and Sebastien Haller caused problems. There was the first chance where Adingra cuts in, plays the quick cross in, Haller slides, he can't connect. Just so many chances. I thought Nigeria had two bright spots in the first half, and they both came on counterattacks. The second one ends up leading to the goal. It's kind of like a counterattack, but not really. I think Cote d'Ivoire have a throw in, they throw it in. Haller plays a very poor pass without looking. I think it's Lookman that intercepts. I forget who plays. I think it's Sanusian. His cross is deflected out for a corner kick. And then Lookman plays a corner kick that I think is Jean-Michel Seri heads backwards for some reason. And Troost-Ekong meets it at the penalty spot and heads Nigeria ahead. And it was a goal that came against, the run of play. It was counter to the momentum. But that's also part of Nigeria's identity, right, in this tournament. The entire tournament, we've been saying time and time again, Nigeria doesn't want the ball. They're going to sit back. They're going to hit you on the counterattack. And as much as that's true, Nigeria, throughout this tournament, at least created chances. The main difference in today's match and, the rest of Nigeria's matches, especially earlier on in the tournament, is that they were creating so many chances, even though they were playing this brand of football. But in the last match, we could even say the last two matches, the last match in particular, this one, Nigeria have been poor. They haven't created too many chances. So they had two counterattacks in the first half. One of them leads to a goal off of a corner kick. Then they do a decent job to close out the first half of moving their block up. Because that's another thing I didn't like in today's performance. They weren't creating enough chances, but their block was too low. Ivory Coast were practically playing in Nigeria's half the entire time. But I thought right before half, Nigeria did a good job of moving that block up, troubling Cote d'Ivoire a bit. And that gave me a little bit of confidence for them in the second half. But immediately, in the second half, Cote d'Ivoire just played better. Simon Adingra in particular, if we can attribute Cote d'Ivoire's return in this tournament to anything, you can talk about coaching and Emers Faye and the great job that he's done with this team in just 2 weeks, coming in as the head coach halfway through without the confidence of his government or his federation. So yeah, coaching is a big part of it. Luck is a big part of it. But the biggest part of this turnaround, in my opinion, is the return to fitness of Simon Adingra and Sebastien Haller. Simon Adingra and Haller, they really came back in the knockout stages, and they were coming back as substitutes. They're the ones that catalyzed the comeback against Senegal. They got Nicolas Pepe the ball where he won the penalty kick. They're the ones that Adingra got the equalizer versus Mali. Haller hit the post. Haller got the goal in the semifinal that got them to the final. And today, Simon Adingra has 2 assists and Sebastien Haller has the winning goal. Them two in particular, if they didn't come back for Cote d'Ivoire, I don't think Cote d'Ivoire wins this tournament. I'm damn sure of it, actually. Because Simon Adingra doesn't score that equalizer, they're losing to Mali. So really, my hat's off to those two players. And I think even the former coach Jean-Louis Gasset must be saying, I wish I had them. If I had them, it would have been a different story. But let's go back to the second half. There were 2 things that surprised me in the second half, or disappointed me, I would even say, from Nigeria's perspective. Number one, Ola Aina has been probably the best right back, or maybe one of the best right backs, maybe alongside Kuliso Mudau of South Africa, throughout this tournament. And he's been good defensively and offensively. And this tournament, especially in the second half, he got torched by Simon Adingra time and time again. So I expected and I wanted Aina to do better, but he disappointed me there. So it's not like he owes me anything, but that's my personal observation. And the second point, and maybe the more decisive point, was throughout this tournament, you've been played very good defense. You've been playing very organized defense. And to concede on a corner kick the way they did was very disappointing. It looks like Nigeria is lining up in a zonal marking scheme, right? They put players every, let's say, 2 yards across the 6-yard box. Boom, 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 boom. And the principles of a zone marking scheme, you're not really marking a man if they're at the top of the box. If somebody comes into your zone, you're supposed to meet the ball, right? Calvin Bassey is the last man in the zone marking scheme, and Frank Kessié is maybe 2 or 3 yards away from him. Logically, you're thinking that's Calvin Bassey's man. Zaidu Sanusi is on the post. The ball comes in and it's very well hit by Adingra. It's like a line drive, it's not a big looping cross. It's hit directly, like on a rope. And Kessié is pretty much untouched. He's completely free. I think Bassey either misjudged the trajectory of the ball, thinking that it was because it was hit as a line drive, he has to come and meet it forward instead of backwards. or he just completely forgot about or didn't see Frank Kessié. Because he just, instead of going backwards towards Frank Kessié, he goes forwards. I forget which Ivorian player was in front of him. And Zaidou Sanusi realizes this, and in a panic, he rushes out to try and challenge Kessié. And I don't know if that was the right decision, because I can understand what he's thinking, because he's thinking, oh, Bassi didn't see this ball. I need to go and make him uncomfortable. Maybe he's going to miss it. But at the same time, he abandons his post. I think he maybe would have been able to clear the ball off the post if he stayed on his post. So that kind of unorganized defending from the equalizing goal, I was very disappointed in. But then the winning goal, there's nothing you could do about. I mean, you could defend better if you're Ola Aina, but Simon Adingra, he can do that to many, many defenders. This has been a coming out party for him, you know. Earlier in the tournament, people were talking about coming out party for Mohamed Kudus or Victor Osimhen, and for me, those are already established superstars. For me, this was a coming out party for Simon Adingra. He is a brilliant player, and he gets past Aina and he puts that cross in. And how many strikers do we know can finish like that? Maybe Zlatan Ibrahimovic, maybe Olivier Giroud, and Sebastien Haller is one of them. You know, one of those where it's like that ball is in no man's land and he just sticks out a toe and puts the perfect amount of touch on it. And Cote d'Ivoire win 2-1. And there was really 10 minutes to play, and I thought Nigeria, I mean, they were desperate. They threw on, a bunch of substitutes and tried to get an equalizing goal, but I was disappointed, and they couldn't even conjure up, a decent goal-scoring opportunity in the final 5 to 10 minutes. And that takes me to, before, in the preview, we had 3 big questions. We talked about Sebastien Haller in the air. We specifically talked about him being isolated against fullbacks, and if Nigeria would be able to defend against that. They were able to defend against that. He wasn't never isolated against the fullback. He was always usually marked by Troost-Ekong or Ajayi. But in the air, Sebastien Haller still won the most important duel and still scored a goal in the air off of a cross. The second question we asked, can Victor Osimhen trigger unforced errors from the Ivorian defense? And here, the answer is quite clearly no. Victor Osimhen had his quietest game of the tournament. It's not always his fault because he was isolated. The referee was making some pretty biased and poor calls, I thought, not in Osimhen's favor. But Victor Osimhen didn't trouble the Ivorian defense too much, despite the fact that, I thought like somebody like Kosunu, who's very aggressive, who's going to try to, meet Osimhen's aggression. I thought Osimhen's too clever, and I thought he could make him pay for that, but he didn't really have any big chances in this match. And the third question, so we had, can Nigeria neutralize Haller in the air? Can Osimhen trigger unforced errors? And the third question was, will Nigeria look fatigued? Remember, we talked about how many Nigerian players had more than 400 and 500 minutes in their legs. We talked about Cote d'Ivoire not being the case for them. Look at, for example, the difference between Ola Aina and Simon Adingra, how fresh Simon Adingra seemed after he missed the entire group stages and didn't start even in the knockout stages. Think about Osimhen. I think he picked up a knock in the second half when Seko Fofana landed on his ankle and he was limping. But who looked fresh from Nigeria today? Maybe Sanusi. He was running a lot. Wasn't doing much good when he was running. But let's think. Let's see. Sanusi maybe. Maybe Onyeka. Simon, a little bit of Lookman, but other than that, everybody seemed gassed, everybody seemed fatigued. So ultimately, I think those questions that we had prior to the match, they came up there and they ended up being very important. Let's make 2 final conclusions about these 2 teams. So with Nigeria and Jose Peseiro, I don't know if they plan on keeping him, at the helm for the Nigerian national team. The thing with Peseiro and the style that he employed during the Afcon, when you win, it's great. But when you lose, it looks especially bad because you're called negative, you're called reactionary, you're called, all kinds of names. And so I think the Nigerian media is going to be very harsh with him. But I think overall, he's done a great job in this tournament. I'm not just saying that, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but I think he's done a good job and he deserves to be extended. And if he isn't extended, his name's also doing the round, like Hugo Bruce. especially with North African nations. And I think he will get another job fairly easily. He definitely proved that he was a good coach during this tournament. And there were big questions about him prior to the tournament. The second point I want to make about Nigeria and the final one is more about Victor Osimhen. I interviewed Didier Drogba prior to this tournament, and I asked him about losing a final because Didier Drogba lost a lot of finals. I think he lost the UEFA Cup with Marseille. He lost, a Champions League final with Chelsea. He lost Afcon finals 2 times, 2006 and 2012. He told me that Jose Mourinho told him that you always remember the ones you lose, and that's why you don't want to lose. He says the ones that I won, like against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, he's like, they're like a blur in my mind. They're like a flash, and I was so happy, but I don't remember much. But the ones he said that you lose, you can remember every single dark-gone detail. You can remember it all. And you replay it in your head and you think, what could I have done better? What can I have done better? What can I have done better? And he says in the summer, he would just rewatch the match 10,000 times and think about what could he have done different? What could he have done more? How could we win the next one? And I think Didier Drogba and Victor Osimhen have a similar mentality. I think him losing the final can end up being one of the best things that's ever happened to him if Nigeria surround him well. You have your propeller if you're the Nigerian Super Eagles. You have the person that's going to take you forward. Surround him well. Make sure he has good coaching. Make sure there are no off-the-field issues. You're going to be back. I mean, all of the big African superstars, from Mahrez to Mane to Salah, they all got their teams to finals of Afcons. Multiple times for some of them. I think Osimhen can definitely get this team back, and he's going to learn from this experience. For Cote d'Ivoire, my final thoughts are, we came into this tournament and we didn't know anything about Cote d'Ivoire. We knew that they had an incredible 23 of players, right? Or 27, I should say. But we didn't know who their best 11 were. We didn't know what kind of style that they were going to play. And we leave this tournament, and I would say even after the group stages, we didn't really know the answer to those questions. But now we leave the tournament and we do know. We do know that it's Adingra on the left and Haller in the center, and then maybe Gradel or Pepe or anybody else on the right. We do know who the best midfield 3 combination are. It's Jean-Michel Seri as a 6, not Ibrahim Sangare. We do know who the best center halves are, Evan Ndika and Odilon Kasunu. We do know that Yahya Fofana is a proven commodity as a goalkeeper. Cote d'Ivoire not only leave this tournament with a trophy, they also leave it with a team. They know who they are now. And most importantly, they leave with a 3rd star. And I'm just, a fan or a journalist. And so I obviously have no real implication with playing the games, and I don't deserve, any congratulations or whatever when Algeria wins. But I remember us winning the tournament in 2019, and the feeling of just like being overwhelmed with happiness for days on end, and it's lifting, an entire nation. People all of a sudden walking with their chests out, that's something that really happens, not just for Algeria but also with Senegal. You saw after what happened after they won in 2021. They end up winning a bunch of different competitions, although they never won any competitions prior to that. It can lift the morale of an entire nation. That's what the African Cup of Nations can do. That's what a trophy can do. And I think that's what we're going to see with Cote d'Ivoire. Anyways, this has been a quick recap of the final. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. Thank you for subscribing, for watching during this African Cup of Nations. This channel has grown exponentially. Now YouTube partners, we're close to having 2,000 subscribers. Lots of people are interacting with the videos. And I would just extend one last invitation to all of you to stick around after the African Cup of Nations. I'm going to do my best to continue analyzing and breaking down African football from the north to the south, to the east to the west. And if you enjoy it, do please let me know. Do subscribe. Do leave a thumbs up here and on the audio streaming platforms. Thank you one more time. And if you're Ivorian, congratulations. And we'll leave it there. Peace.